Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to this special, I would say, Lazio Lounge episode. Special, in particularly for Alistair McKenzie. I think this has been the best weekend of your life, Alistair. Lazio winning, Ross County beating, I didn't know this, for the first time ever, Rangers. I mean, what an exciting weekend. Luckily enough, Luis Alberto just happened to ruin your weekend, and we'll have to talk about Felipe Anderson, right? So it was a good weekend, but the new week didn't start pretty well.
Yeah, it's one of these things where supporting the teams that I do is very, very rare where I get a weekend where they both win. And so that happened, but it obviously comes at a cost, Vittorio. Because my God, I mean, I leave Rome for 3 days, and the entire team falls apart. We've lost Luis Alberto, we've lost Felipe Anderson, Matteo Guendouzi seems to have gone to war with Tudor. There's all sorts of transfer rumors around other players in the team. I mean, it's really frustrating because talking last week before this Salernitana game, it was all about, well, will this new strategy work? Will the attack actually deliver against weaker opponents? And yes, it did. And well, can we get back on track with a very important win? And yes, we did. And the other teams slip up. And, all the stuff around the actual league results was great, but the off-field stuff you cannot ignore. And it's the biggest talking point. So I think we're going to talk about that more today than anything that actually happened on the pitch on Friday, probably.
Yeah, because it's even Friday now. We are Tuesday, so it's a little bit far away in the past. Just for listeners, yesterday morning I was doing my normal stuff, and my source called me and said, "Hey, Felipe Anderson to Juventus is done. So if you want to talk about it," and obviously, I trust my source, so I did it. And then I went to play football last night. I come back and Felipe Anderson to Palmeiras. So really surprising, Alistair, because I could understand at a certain point. You go to Juventus, they are going to play the Champions League next season. They're gonna play even this new, how it's called, World Team Cup.
Club
That
World Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, like that now will comprehend 24 teams, something like that. So it makes sense. Even though, and I want to hear your opinion. I thought Lazio offering 5 years contract to Felipe Anderson, who is 31 years old, made no sense to me. I thought it was a disaster. So even if Felipe would have stayed at Lazio, I thought that would have been a disaster for us, because paying 36 years old Felipe Anderson 3.5 million euros for a player that probably would be on the bench all season long would have been a mistake. But I don't know. What's your reaction? What were people saying in Scotland about Felipe Anderson?
Not much. You'll be amazed to hear.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's funny because the Alberto story was so dominant for that 48 hours, and then I guess Anderson just chose his moment. Yeah, I does he think that's the best moment? While there's already a lot of chaos and uncertainty, and the game on Friday, a lot of protests from the fans. There's basically just not a good atmosphere around the club at the moment. So maybe he thought, I'm just adding one more thing in here. Maybe he thought it's better to do this now than to do it later so that I get rid of any uncertainty. I think one thing we will probably all agree on is that although it's a big surprise, like you said, it's better this way. I mean, we don't want to see him in a Juventus shirt.
Yep.
So if he's going to go, it's much better that he heads back to Brazil than that he stays in Italy. That said, it feels like it must be a personal decision. From what I've read, actually, Palmeiras are going to be paying him more or less what he would have got at Lazio anyway. But it's going to leave a huge hole, Vito. I mean, it's something we discussed quite recently. This is a guy who has played 152 games in a row, I think. A guy who's played as a striker, as a winger, as a number 10, as a wing back. He can do everything. He's like the Swiss Army knife of the Lazio team. He has immense quality, like we saw on Friday night against Salernitana. Although I get what you're saying about you maybe don't want him age 36 still under contract, I completely understand why getting him a new contract was considered a priority, because I think looking at the squad now, he's probably the most important player you've got left, considering his reliability, his versatility, and his quality. So I think it's another massive, massive error by the club to allow such an important player to be leaving for free. I mean, we've seen it happen before, but it's so frustrating. Not only it's always frustrating to lose your best players, but when you lose them for nothing, I mean,
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned yesterday on my YouTube channel, if you give him a pair of gloves, he could have played even in goalie and probably be even good there. So this is how reliable and important Felipe Anderson is. And Tudor, I think in 3 press conference, every time mentioned the importance of Felipe Anderson. He can play. He played left back, right winger, left winger, center forward, everywhere. So that's very important for a manager. I guess every manager love that type of players. I think he said it now because rumors were spreading out that he was signing for Juventus. And on Friday, after he scored the first goal, Lazio fans chanted songs against Juventus because, everybody knew he was going to Juventus. So I thought he wanted to avoid this thing, saying, hey, I'm not staying, but I'm moving to Palmeiras. And so I guess from now on, fans won't be chanting against Felipe Anderson because he's going back to Brazil and he's not going to one of our opponents. And I think this is important. Said this is the same issue we had last year with Milinkovic Savic, right? Lazio wasn't unable to sign a new contract in time with Sergei, and so you had to send him out last summer. With Felipe Anderson, he's going on free. Now we have the Zaccagni situation that is pretty much the same thing. This club is not able to manage things. And I was reading the interview last Saturday the sport director Fabiani gave to the official Lazio radio. And I thought, my God, this is not possible. He said, now we are dealing with the renewal of contract of Felipe Anderson. Then we're going to deal with Zaccagni. Then we're going to deal. Come on, you are a professional football club. You cannot tell me that you're not able to play on different tables. I don't believe Lazio is not able to talk about the Felipe Anderson contract extension and at the same time the Zaccagni and so on. Are you really focusing on one thing at a time? I mean, this is embarrassing, and this explains you why we're always late, right? We should have been able to fix the Felipe Anderson contract last year, not this year.
Yeah, exactly. And the other stuff Fabiani was saying about Anderson, this guy, where he basically said that they're happy to give him the third highest salary on the squad and a 5-year deal because he's such a consummate professional that they're basically backing him to stay in peak fitness and condition for that length of time. But I'm sorry, if that is what you think, and you believe that he's this amazing professional, that he's going to stay at that level for that length of time, that you're willing to commit to that length of contract, you're willing to give him that much money, why in the name of God are you waiting until it's 2 months until the end of his contract to be saying that stuff and to be actually trying to get him to sign something? It's unbelievable. I mean, this is not a surprise. You can Google someone's name and you can see what time their contract ends. I mean, it is not a difficult thing to find out. It kind of taken them by surprise. So I just find it staggering when this kind of stuff happens. And especially, if it was kind of their plan all along, if they were trying to play hardball, if they were, I don't know, they had some strategy around this, fair enough. But it sounds like there was none of that, because the club message was basically, we love Felipe Anderson, we value Felipe Anderson, we think he's an amazing player, that he'll have great longevity. Well, what are you doing then? what are you doing? I mean, it's, eventually, ultimately he may have ended up going back to Brazil anyway, because if that's what he wants to do at this stage of life, he wants to go home. It's got an emotional connection. It's Palmeiras is in São Paulo, which is near where he's from. Then fair enough. But to wait until mid-April before this happens is
not only Alistair, but now it's the 16th of April, and you know Felipe Anderson is leaving. You have all the time till the 1st of July to find a replacement. A big club, a good club, will already, for the 1st of July, transfer market window open, first day. This is the replacement of Felipe Anderson. We made it. Here it is. You have more than 2 months to do it. And we know it's not going to happen, right? And maybe Fabiani is going to say, hey, Isaacsen is the replacement of Felipe Anderson. Well, wait a minute. He's already with us. You didn't change nothing, You lost a player, and you're simply saying that one in the squad will play for him instead. So this is a disaster. Not only talking about Zaccagni, it's April. Zaccagni contract expiring in 1 year time. So this means that this summer is the only opportunity you have to sell him and make money. So you have until June to sign a new contract. Otherwise, you'll have to sell it. Otherwise, you're going to lose Zaccagni for free, and it's not acceptable. I mean, you lost Felipe Anderson for free, but you cannot afford to lose even Zaccagni for free. So you have not that much time to find a deal, an arrangement with the agent. And we know that this type of agent is complicated, right? He asking for 3.5 million euros. And you can make the point that Zaccagni is not worthy. He had a very good season last year, but this year he's average, at least, at best, I would say. I mean, he's got a lot of injury. He didn't score a lot of goals. So is it worthy 3.5 million euros? Probably not. He's 5 goals and 1 assist. Come on, that's not enough for that fee, and he's always injured. So Lazio have to make a decision. But again, you're arriving to this summer with Felipe Anderson gone and you need to replace him. Luis Alberto, who wants to leave, and you need to replace him. If you need to sell even Zaccagni and replace him, it's going to be quite complicated for a team like Lazio that, we're working on the renewal contract of Felipe Anderson, then Zaccagni, etc. It's a club that is not multitasking, right? We have to do one thing at a time. Well, summer has 2 months. Are you able to replace 6 players doing this? No, it's not, right? It's not possible.
No, and this is something that I said from the very start with Igor Tudor, that beyond anything else, one of my biggest concerns about him coming in was what that automatically meant for how much he needed to be done in the Mercato. The squad is not adapted to play in Tudor's style of football long term. He can maybe muddle his way through to the end of this season, but long term, it's not going to be able to play his style of football. So there was already so much work to be done. Actually, we got one comment on Twitter here from Alexander Pearson. He said that the calculations, even without sales, is that we would need a starting striker, a young reserve wing-back, and 2 reserve centre-backs. I think he's being a bit conservative there with the estimate of what we need personally. But the point is, he's saying, we already need all these players before you even consider that Anderson might leave, that Alberto might leave. Anderson definitely is leaving, but, Alberto, Anderson, Pedro, Kamada, Immobile, Lazzari, who knows? I mean, the list is really long of players who are either definitely leaving or look quite likely to leave. And that's coming from a base where we already have to make all these signings. And like from everything you're saying, we just can't trust the club to do that. And so this is the risk. And some of the other comments we've had this week about the kind of new era, the new cycle and stuff, there's some concern in there that with things the way they are, is this the moment that Lazio almost kind of become a mid-table team again?
Well,
because how do we especially if those senior players who are the top quality players, if we lose Sergei, Immobile, Alberto, and Anderson all in the space of 2 years, and are we trusting the club to produce a squad that is equally filled with quality as the one that is disappearing?
Well, we cannot trust the club. That's the problem. But, they have to do something. And to be honest with you, they have time. They have time and they have money. Because let's not forget that the Champions League money is coming in June. So you have money to spend. Obviously, you have to spend it wisely because if you spend 80 million euros on Murici, then you're wasting money, right? But changing system again means that you have to sign different players. I know Tare is not with the club anymore, but we don't need wingers anymore, right? So now you have like 4 wingers, and probably you don't need them. You need center backs because you're playing with a 3-man defense. So you need 6 center backs, and now we have 4. So it's obvious that you need to sign at least 2 more. Probably you have too many midfielders because you have too many trequartista, because you have the wingers, you have Kamada, you have Luis Alberto. So you need to sell someone and to replace them. And then you have mistakes, keeping Luis Alberto, keeping Immobile. They are expensive players that are not contributing anymore like before. And, we had a lot of comments saying, hey, we need a striker. Yeah, of course, I agree with you. We need someone who scores, and Ciro is not that player anymore. So I think you have to replace Ciro. Now, the question we have is, are you getting money out of selling Ciro? That's difficult, right? He's 34. He's coming off his worst season. If Saudi Arabia doesn't come with a lot of money, I don't think anybody's going to spend some money on Ciro Immobile. Luis Alberto, I'm not sure Lotito's going to let him go for free. Again, someone has to come and offer some cash for the player. So I think you need to change a lot of players. But we also have to say that there has been a lot of rumors in the last week or so of players wanting to leave. Well, Lazzari yesterday said that it's not true that he has to leave the club. He's happy he wants to stay. And it makes sense, Salazar. He's back to the 3 defense. That is where he's born and raised, right? This is the type of football where Lazzari shine. So I think it doesn't make sense for Lazzari to leave the club. This morning on the Corriere dello Sport, Romagnoli's agent said he's happy at Lazio. He's definitely staying. There were a lot of rumors about Romagnoli leaving. So at least we know some players won't be leaving. Obviously, you need to replace some of them. I mean, Pedro, it's better if he doesn't stay, right? He's done as a player, or at least of this level. Ciro Immobile is another player who needs to leave. The Kamada situation is not very clear. I hope he stays because he fits to the Tudor system. But there are at least 3-4 players that have to leave the club. So it's going to be a very busy summer. I don't trust Fabiani. I hope something incredible happens to Lazio. But answering to a couple of questions, I don't remember who said, is the starting of a new cycle? Yes, I think it is. And it has to be, right? Lazio squad, and we mentioned this, I think, for a year long, it's a very old team. And we need to rejuvenate the team. But this doesn't mean weakening the team. We need to sign youngsters that are even good. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's that difficult. I mean, Ciro Immobile scored 10 goals this season. Serie A, Champions League, Coppa Italia, 10 goals. I mean, I don't think it's that hard to find a striker that scores 10 goals, right? Luis Alberto had 4 goals and 8 assists this season. Really, I don't think it's that difficult to replace a player that scored only 4 goals and 8 assists. Obviously, Fabiani has to do some homeworks and sign the right players, but it shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider here too is another of the comments we had from Oliver Pill was saying that I doubt the current chaos will be helpful in our pursuit of attracting new players. And that's something I said back when Sarri resigned about the coaches. I doubt is going to be that attractive. If you see Sarri walking out mid-season, a coach of that ability and history and everything, saying, I don't know what the hell to do with these guys anymore, and leaving. So you've seen that happen. Sarri's given up on it. Then Luis Alberto's given up on it by publicly announcing out of the blue that he wants to leave. Then you've got Felipe Anderson deciding he'd rather go back home than stay. I think there is a point there. It's not just that Lazio have all this work to do in terms of filling these positions in the squad. It's that they're going to have to sell this project to prospective players. And let's be in no doubt about the fact that Sarri was a big draw for that. Sarri was a guy who had the reputation and was attractive to players to come and work with him because he brings with him an identity and a style that people want to be a part of. Igor Tudor possessed.
A lot of players have improved with Sarri in the past. And Guendouzi said one of the reasons why he signed for Lazio is he wanted to be managed by Sarri to improve his tactic skills.
And then within 8 months, he's back with Tudor again, falling out with him. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. And so I think it's a really difficult situation because we'll come on to the Champions League race and stuff, but the chances are the Lazio aren't going to be able to offer Champions League football next season. So you're talking about a club that's been badly mismanaged this season, that has been torn apart by what's been going on off the field. And you're kind of looking at that as a prospective player if you've got a few offers, and you might be like, well, that seems a bit dodgy to me. I think that is it's another layer of complication that the club's going to have to deal with, is selling this as something that's going somewhere. That I think a big degree of frustration from the Laziali this year has been about the fact that what we've always been pining for is the back-to-back Champions League qualification. That's the real mark of progress that we've not seen in this 21st century, really, of just managing to back up a good season with another good season domestically. It just never happens. And yes, okay, a run to the knockouts in the Champions League was good this season, but you can't say that it's been a successful season just on the basis of that if we end up finishing down in 8th. And how are we going to convince everyone, fans, players, coaches, that Lazio are heading to that goal? It's felt in recent years with Inzaghi and Sarri that it has been building. There's momentum behind this team. They've got a really good, strong core of this team. But now that strong core is getting old or leaving the club or has left the club, now that they've shown that they haven't been able to reach that target, that they haven't been able to reach the next level, even with that core of the squad, it's starting to look a bit more difficult to convince people that that's the direction of travel.
Well, I think you have a huge opportunity now to change everything, because you were mentioning the core. Are we sure that, apart from Lotito's problem, etc., are you sure that the core of the team was the problem? I mean, I think it's hard to compete, to perform with a player like Luis Alberto complaining every single season, and one time it's the airplane, now it's the contract, and then there is the money there, now there's the passing, I want to play here, I mean, for a teammate of Luis Alberto, I think it's hard to play with him. You can argue probably even with Ciro Immobile is not that easy. He's a great teammate, but probably he's not a winner. He doesn't have the winning mentality, because this year Lazio had a better team than last season, and all the players didn't perform, right? Ciro scored 10 goals, Luis Alberto 4, etc., etc. It's not the new signing that failed. It's the old players that failed. And this happened even with Inzaghi in the past. So maybe this is time to say, hey, we reset everything. We sell these players because, they're getting older and probably their mentality is not fit for a winning team. Could it be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really hard to call which way around it could go, because there's undoubtedly an issue there. And I think that the mentality problem within this squad that has been complained about and lamented for years and years, there has to be an element of that has been, even if it's not necessarily the individual fault of these players, they've certainly not helped it. It's not been, it's not been solved by these guys, by the leadership group in that squad. So there's a chance to change the culture within the dressing room there. But it's a big risk, because with that, be that as it may, those guys did possess a level of quality that's going to be really difficult to replace. I think that there is at least, you mentioned before the rejuvenation of the squad. There has at least been some work done there, which the club deserves a little bit of credit for, where we can at least now say, okay, if we are moving on, we can now see a bit of a core. There's Gila, there's Isaacson, there's Guendouzi, Mandas. There's a decent Rovella. There's a decent core of young players there who you can start to build something off.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some youngsters that are really promising, and I always thought that the biggest issue of this team is we don't have a real leader. Luis Alberto is not a leader. He's a great player, or at least he has been a great player, but he's not a leader. I think Chiro is not a real leader. It's not a motivator, someone who, leads you to victory. I guess Guendouzi is probably more that type of player than Guendouzi, than Chiro. So changing a little bit can be useful. Isaacson looks interesting. I like Rovella a lot. I thought we missed him badly in the last 2 months or so. So you need to add to this team. And again, I reiterate, 3 years ago, replacing Chiro would have been really, really hard. In the last 2 seasons, I think it's not that difficult, right? 10 goals this season, 30 last year. Same thing with Luis Alberto. Obviously, if I had Marotta, I would say Alistair. Easy peasy. We're going to have a much better team next year. Unfortunately, we don't have Marotta. We have Fabiani. So, I'm really concerned about that. But crossing fingers, he's going to have the money and he has time to sign new players, and good players, obviously. We have a decent base, Isaacs and et cetera, et cetera. So I hope, I don't think the issue will be solved in 1 year. But, in a couple of years, if Tudor proved to be a good manager, we have some option. Let's not forget that, for example, Cancellieri can be a solution, right? He's playing decent in Empoli. He can have another opportunity at Lazio next year. Maybe he's improved, etc. So I think I don't trust the club more than the signing. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's always the issue, though, isn't it? How can you really trust them to pull this off? You said the club's got money. Does it have enough money to do all of this? To do all of this, I think they have to be really savvy,
Yeah. Well,
and when I'm already worried about some of the stuff we're seeing, it's like looking at players from Salernitana who have been, destined for relegation since the season started, basically. And that is not the way that we are going to push up the table towards back-to-back Champions League qualifications.
yes.
I don't think it needs to be superstars all the time, don't get me wrong, but I just think that it's difficult with this kind of mid-range budget. It's become pretty difficult with a club of Lazio's kind of wealth in the market now. You have to be super smart, really.
Yeah, but can we say that sport journalism, especially in Italy, have become very lazy? I mean, we saw it in the past. Sarri is the manager. Okay, all players from Napoli Sarri is moving to Lazio. Then Tudor comes in. All Verona players from Tudor are moving to Lazio. I mean, come on. Can it be serious? Can it be like that you bring all your players from your former team to the new club? I mean, it's very lazy from the journalists, right? Sarri is going to bring all Napoli. Mertens is 38. He's a former player. I mean, I don't know why they didn't mention Higuain, because probably he's retired. But same thing with Tudor. Can you expect all Verona players to move to Lazio? No. Even because if we did, we're going to be fighting for relegation, not for Champions League. So same thing. Salernitana is going to be relegated. I'm sorry for the Salernitana fans. We're going to sign all Salernitana players because Lotito has a link with Salernitana. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen.
No. Yeah, I'm with you there.
I mean,
no, you're right. I mean, this is part of the reason I just kind of shut off all media for the 2 months of the summer and don't really bother to engage with it, because the Mercato stuff around Lazio is just mostly invented. I mean, we've even seen it recently. They don't really have that many leaks. So even, we've got Fabrizio Romano giving it the big "here we go" for Anderson to Juventus, and you can't really trust any transfer rumor with Lazio. So I do know what you're saying. I think we should probably get on to looking at the Champions League race a little bit, because we've just done half an hour on the squad. What do you think?
Champions League race is over. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Well, I think that is the popular take on it, but we've had a message, so we may as well discuss. It's from Jeppe Opstrup. He said, "Why does everyone think it's off? Because Bologna's getting tired. Roma have a lot of tough games, and with a potential Europa League semi-final, it's the same for Atalanta, and with the Coppa, and then Napoli is having an even worse season with us. We could potentially win all the remaining games, even against Inter, who have..." With the new spirit coming into the team with Tudor, I would not be surprised if we finish above both Roma and Atalanta, and maybe even Bologna. So a top 5 should be doable. There you go. There's the team talk. Come on.
Okay. Jeppe said this question, right? Ask this question.
Yeah.
If it happens, I will buy you the new Lazio shirt and send it your way.
Got that promise recorded, Jeppe.
I mean, if it happens, I will be at Piazza del Popolo celebrating. I mean, we are 10 points behind Bologna with 6 games to play. It's complicated, to be honest with you.
We don't need to catch Bologna, though. We need 5th.
Well, it's not yet official. It's very
99.8% certain now.
Yeah, but still, Roma is 6 points ahead of us with 1 game on hand. Now, you're gonna tell me it's 10 minutes, but if Roma struggles, I wouldn't be surprised if Udinese move the goal and allow Roma to score. So I see it very difficult. It's true that they are slowing down, both Bologna, Roma, and as well Atalanta. That was, for me, the biggest surprise, to be honest with you. But we forgot to mention Lazio need to win pretty much every single game. Seeing this Lazio, are we sure it's going to happen? I mean, Friday is Genoa-Lazio. It's not a game that I see, it's going to be an easy win.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my main argument here, was that I don't think Lazio finished top 5. And the main reason for that isn't about the other teams. I totally agree with everything he said. I think they are going to slow down. I think that all those teams Bologna are going to get a bit nervy. They've just lost Lewis Ferguson to injury as well. And Roma have, like you said, the Europa League distraction, and Atalanta too. And all this stuff is true. But what evidence have we seen that Lazio are about to go on a tear and win loads of games? I'm sorry, but smashing Salernitana in a game where we actually conceded loads of chances to them isn't exactly an opportunity to get too excited about winning every game for the rest of the season. And realistically, with that gap you're talking about, I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, because usually I'm not with this stuff, but I just think that Lazio haven't shown nearly enough under Sarri before he resigned, and now under Tudor, to suggest that that's about to happen.
I mean, if the question was, do you think Lazio is going to finish in the Europa League? I would say yes, probably yes, because Napoli is really struggling. I mean, we talk about Frosinone Lazio, and we were laughing, and Napoli was able to not win a home game against Frosinone, which is embarrassing, to be honest. And Atalanta is slowing down, etc. So I think Lazio, if we finish 7th, so the actual place will be in Europa League. So this is something we have to consider. But Champions League, it would be a huge surprise. I repeat, if we arrive in the Champions League, Jeppe, you get the shirt next year. Because Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. Again, Roma has tough games, but not that tough. I mean, seeing Bologna playing, do you think Bologna is going to beat Roma at home away next Monday? Not sure about that. Then there's Napoli-Roma. Seeing this Napoli, do you think Napoli is going to stop Roma? Not sure about that. Roma-Juventus, again, Juventus is playing rubbish. The only team who could lose against Juventus, here we are. The team that needs to win every single game, but we lose against Juventus. So
the other thing to remember too is that you can look at the table and add another point for all those teams above us, because the tiebreaker is head-to-head. Please don't forget that. And we have lost the head-to-head to all of those teams. So they're actually an extra point ahead of us than they look in the table.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bit depressing, our take on this, but realistic, I would say.
I mean, if we win against Genoa and we play a good game, then, I could believe a little bit more. But we just beat Salernitana. That's it, right? We beat Juventus at the last second, and Juventus has been dreadful so far in the last month or so. We lost against Roma, the derby, and it doesn't look to me Roma is playing that great football anymore. So I'm not convinced this team has switched, but, if it happens, I think it's a little bit too early, without forgetting that we're playing the Coppa Italia next week. And that could be a very important game for us, right? It's difficult. We're 2-0 down, but it's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible. And I think that what we saw in the first leg will give us confidence because, sorry, not in the first leg, but in the first game against Juventus, just because in that match, they did show, that playing against a team that sits that deep and is that negative can help this Lazio team that flooding the final third. I mean, against Salernitana, it was kind of all-out attack at times. There's one moment where Mario Gila kind of ran into midfield and played a through ball to Patrick running into the box. And I was thinking, wow, they are really committing to attack here. And they need to do that. It's good because I think when you're chasing a deficit like that, you have to have that attacking approach, obviously. And it's an approach that Lazio didn't look capable of under Sarri. So at least it's something that we've seen change, is that even though they're not converting as much as we would like, we are spending a lot more time attacking teams. And I hope that an early goal will be everything, and to try and actually put a bit of pressure under a Juve team that, like you said, isn't playing very well, is under a lot of pressure, is feeling their own kind of crisis. So it's still possible. It would be a hell of a turnaround, but it is still possible.
Alistair, we talked about the Coppa Italia. Monday 22, there's Roma-Bologna. Tuesday 23, there's Lazio-Juventus. Both playing at the Stadio Olimpico. Yeah. It's incredible, right? Doesn't make sense.
I haven't actually thought about that. So, but it's a brand new pitch now, isn't it? Have they not changed the surface since? So it should stand up to 2 games.
Do you think so? In less than 24 hours.
Is this another Vittorio conspiracy?
It's not a conspiracy. It's really crazy. I mean, who is doing the fixture for the Italian football at 2 years old?
Well, the same people who haven't yet announced what time or days the games are on next weekend.
I know. I was looking because maybe people are not aware. It's bank holiday next week. So I think everybody's planning to go away, but there is Lazio playing at home, but we don't know at what time. So I don't know at what time are we coming back, if we're coming back, right? So yeah, that's crazy. That's really stupid.
Yes.
That's Italian football, guys. When you hear, we are close to the Premier League. No, we are not even that close, right? I think the championship is closer. Anyway. Do you have other questions, Alistair?
Well, we had loads of questions this week, so I would say thank you to everyone who sent them in. And although I've not read them all out, I think we have more or less covered the base of the talking points that people were mentioning. So I think we've done a decent job on that.
So can I ask you a question, Alistair? Are you gonna? Do you think Lazio or Tudor needs to bench Luis Alberto and Felipe Anderson for the rest of the season?
No, I mean, I think Felipe Anderson definitely not, because I don't really hold huge criticism for Anderson for this. He's out of contract. He's got every right to join a club on a pre-contract. You know, he's within his rights to do that. The only difference is he's announced it. But I think he's still one of our most important players. And Alberto is more about, I think that has to be a judgment call based on what they're seeing behind the scenes of how he's influencing the squad. Because if he's in a big sulk and he is creating a bad atmosphere, then he shouldn't be playing, because that is not going to help anyone. But if it's just one of these mood swings, and we know what he's like, he's so kind of temperamental and does strange things quite regularly. So I don't know, it could just be one of these things. He's gone and said something stupid, and then he's like, yeah, sorry about that, guys, and you get on with it, and then it would be fine. So it kind of depends what Alberto's own reaction is like, to be honest.
Yeah, but this comes back to my thoughts, right? How can you pretend to keep winning with a leader like that, right? One of the oldest member of the clubs. That it depends how he wakes up. One day is sunshine, the other day is raining, etc. I mean, you cannot perform at the same level with a player like that.
Yeah, and it was kind of added salt to the wound that he did this on the day he was wearing the captain's armband.
Yeah. And to be honest, against Salernitana, his performance was average. And Salernitana is a very bad team. I mean, everybody looked great against Salernitana except Luis Alberto.
Well, I mean, I would say, you know, Tudor's shown that he's not been relying on Alberto, to say the least. So he's not at least under pressure to pick a guy he's completely dependent on. I would like to see Isaacson between now and the end of the season get leaned on a little bit more, see what we can get out of him. Obviously made a good impact with the goal off the bench. He strikes me as a player who's got a lot of ability, just needs a bit of direction. And this season has been really difficult for him to find that direction because it's been so chaotic. I mean, as a first year in Italy goes, it's not been an easy one. The change of coach, I mean, everything that's happened really. We don't need to run through it all. But I think there's a lot of potential there. So, you know, if Alberto's not going to be playing, I wouldn't mind seeing Isaacson and Anderson being the two lining up behind the striker.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I would love to see Sana Fernandez as Diego Gonzalez called sometime and maybe have a couple of minutes to prove their talent. But I think this is a long shot, especially if Lazio is still fighting for a Champions League position. Anyway, Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. Thanks again for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the podcast and to all your questions. We try to answer to more questions as possible. Lazio is playing this Friday. So Genoa Lazio, again, very important if you want to fight for not only the Champions League, but even for the Europa League. And we're going to be back as soon as possible with the recap of this game. And take care, everybody.